Thank you so much for coming along to the very first of our New Zealand Music Month talk series here at Palmerston North Library. My name is Hugh. I work for Manawatu People's Radio. We're the people who are producing this in collaboration with the library. That's us there. You can find everything we do at npr.nz. What we do in brief is teach people how to make their very own radio shows into podcasts, and then we broadcast them and push them out to the world. And one of the people who does that is the wonderful Eddie McEwan.
Hi.
Who makes a show called The Audio Archive, which is a deeply eclectic music and comedy show. But the reason that we're talking to Eddie today is that he has been a fixture of the Palmerston North music scene as a fan for a very long time.
Very long time.
I'm really interested to hear about the history of music in the city where we live, because it's quite unique.
Yes.
We are an odd little backwater in some ways, and that makes some very interesting things happen.
Indeed.
And also, you were part of a kind of seminal piece of Palmerston North weird art history, the House of Goth,
yes.
Which is the home of this rather spectacular object behind us. So,
totem pole made of cow bones.
Yeah, and what else?
Yes.
To start us off, Eddie, how did you connect with the local Palmerston North music scene to start with?
Before I begin, I'd really like to dedicate this show to the memory of Beck White. She passed just a couple of weeks ago. It's still pretty raw for a whole bunch of my friends. She was a big part of the HoG scene. Anyone who saw her work, especially what she did with deconstructing Barbie dolls, you won't forget it. So this one's for Beck. So, it all starts at about 1980. I'm like, should be studying for my school cert. I'm not. I'm making mixtapes up. I'm listening to Barry Jenkins on Radio Hauraki, and he has the line to like the Buzzcocks magazine, Joy Division. Joy Division was really big. And also, I was going to school, I was trading mixtapes, but I was lucky enough to go to school with Nicky Rowan, who was the bass player for the Skeptics. And he gave me an intro into the world of snail clamps. And snail clamps was an all-ages venue, pretty much where the Pack and Save storeroom is now.
It's sort of the spiritual precursor to the Stomach, right?
Absolutely it was. It was all ages. It was a narrow concrete bunker. It had been named after, they'd found spray painted on the wall snail clamps in a designation because it was some kind of electrical tool. But snail clamps was awesome. I saw a whole bunch of bands. I saw my first Flesh Device show there. I saw the Kiwi Animal. I saw Otis Mace, the guitar ace. And this was all when I was 15, 16.
It's like, I think the impact of being able to get places like that as a teenager can't be underestimated, right? Because that's sort of prime developmental brain spots for getting into music. And having access to these kinds of things is really powerful. The
next thing I was doing was going up to Massey, where the social hall shows were. I was still at high school, so I wasn't supposed. Only students were supposed to go to these shows, but I was going anyway. I was a tall kid. No one was going to ask any questions. I saw some awesome bands there as well in the social hall. The one that really sticks with me was the Screaming Glamatics tour. So Screaming Mimes, Blam Blam Blam, Pneumatics, all three bands play, and then they all come on stage and give you the full workover with the Ska big brass band. And I'd never encountered that before. And I walked home that night and literally there were stars in my ears.
So at that point, it sounds like there were a fair few acts coming through Palmerston North.
Yes.
Like you could...
Well, there was still the touring band scene was still happening. You could go down to the Albert and there'd be like a different band every week.
That's... Because that's... we do get big bands coming through, but not one a week, right?
No, not at all. And not bands like, My Sex and... was it Graham Brazier? He was always touring.
So... from this foundation then of getting into all these gigs you're not strictly speaking supposed to.
I'm bunking into the Caf de Paris and watching Shades of Grey do magazine covers.
So, and how many venues would you say there were operating at that point in the 1980s here for live music?
Pretty much all the suburban pubs had their house bands. The Snatch was in the Cloverleigh. I had missed Woodwind, who were the house band at the Commercial. I did a lot of time drinking in the Commercial, but there was no house band then. But mostly it was Shades of Grey at the Caf. And that was the Mother's Pub, because that was the style of the times as well. I mean, there were some great bars. I still remember the Cave Bar at the Family, where the McDonald's is now down Rangatiki Street. It was like done up like a lot, like they had vertical logs painted white. That was the entire inside.
Yeah, that dates it by decor a wee bit.
Yeah, and the doors to the toilets were sort of hidden.
Well, why would you want to be able to see those, Eddie? When did you develop this taste for luxury? So, I mean, from this kind of ferment, right? That's where the Palmerston North scene comes out of. And how did you become connected with that, with people who are making music here and forming these sorts of collectives to do it?
Well, from the Snail Clamps days, I was friends with the Skeptics, I was friends with Thin Red Line. I knew Dave White before the Stomach came into existence, because once Snail Clamps sort of folded, there really was a gap. There wasn't an all-ages venue for a start. That was the primary reason for putting the Stomach together. Just to give, like, because kids were forming bands all over the place, and we couldn't play.
Yeah, well,
I tried.
I mean,
I couldn't play.
That's never been a prerequisite for being in a band.
No, but like really, I found I couldn't play.
And so, from that then, how did the HoG arise?
Well, the HoG, in the 70s, there was a lot of big villas. The 60s and 70s, a lot of the big old villas got carved up into student accommodation rather than the family farmsteads they'd been. And like some of them got carved up into flats, some of the larger ones. There were some really impressive big old buildings, and a lot of them just ended up as flats, and the HoG was one of them. That's
a thing I remember from
at the start
from Dunedin when I was a student there, and a lot of those still persist. Is just like these enormous decaying Victorian piles with ceilings miles high, completely impossible to heat, all that stuff. Yeah.
Most of them are gone now in Palmerston, but there were some impressive buildings back in the day,
And so the HoG then grew out of a nucleus of people setting up in one of those?
What happened was that originally it was sort of student digs, and then it got a bit more decrepit, and an arrangement was made with the owner. And apparently what the story I heard was that the family wanted to pull it down and develop it. And he said, no way. I was born in that house, and as long as I'm above ground, it's going to stay. So he said to them, I don't mind if you don't pay rent, that's fine, as long as you keep the grounds up, you keep it relatively tidy, not perfect, relatively tidy, just don't turn it into a tinny house or a brothel.
Right. Okay. And I mean, there's a book of photos of the HoG floating around, and if people want to look at that, it was many things, but not a tinny house or a brothel.
It was a tinny house for a bit.
So, what was the original crew like then? Because
the original crew, considering what was to come later, the original crew were pretty civilised. They were like students in the main. I think the people I knew were. They were a couple, and she was doing some kind of masters, and he was doing vet. And then it sort of changed. The artists moved in one at a time, Yeah, as the place got a little less civilised, it got artistic. As you can see by the book, it's the art sort of grew all over the house like a fungus.
And I mean, how did the owner deal with that? Because that's pushing up against the edge.
He wasn't worried.
That's
he
fascinating.
Wasn't worried. Apparently, he was in a major strop with his family, and he didn't care. Even when the grass grew like to your waist high, he didn't care. He'd show up once a year to make sure that no one had carved any walls off or anything like that. But that was the limit of it. And I never met the man.
And so, I mean, were you resident there? Or
No, I never lived there, but I lived in the area. So, and because so many of my friends lived there, it was natural that I'd just drop in. It was a place where you could drop in. For a long time, it was a grubby hive of punk rockers, and it was run like a commune. And for a while, it was run as a personal fiefdom by someone who lived in the bus.
Yeah, there's a tendency for those things to happen after a while.
And then when that came to a crashing end, it was back to the grubby punk rockers and the medieval reenactors. Because it was the de facto headquarters for one group of reenactors for quite some time.
I mean, I suppose that's a thing about Palmerston North as a city, right? Is that we are quite small,
yes,
as cities go.
Yes.
And so, in a way that you might not in another place, you get the punk rockers and the medieval reenactors sharing space.
Well, sometimes they're the same people too.
So, I mean, talk to me a bit more about the development of that art, because...
Well, it sort of came in layers. People would move in. There's one particularly striking image of the front door. My friend Paul painted that panel because someone got a bit obstreperous and kicked the door in one time. But so he needed to replace it.
And so it just sort of organically, bits of it began to be replaced by art as they went along.
Yes, and people would paint and draw, and graffiti was part of it as well. Band posters, people would bring their band posters in. Touring bands would crash at the HoG. There would be they would play their show at either the Stomach or the Wild Horse, and then the after party would be at the HoG, and the band would crash in the lounge, and off they go the next morning.
So, I mean, that's a thing worth saying, right, is that the people who were coming through the HoG, either to crash there or residents who went on to have afterlives, some of these people are moderately notable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wider circle included some fantastic talents.
So, I mean, can you expand on that?
Well, my friend Paul Woods is he's very good. It takes him 6 months to make a painting, though, because he's so technical with it. But other people, oh, god damn! Now you put me on the spot.
Well, I mean, you were mentioning that you had, before we set this bit up, that you had a friend who went on to participate as an armourer in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, no, Stu Johnson. He was part of the scene. He made Sauron's armour. And a fantastically talented man, completely self-taught. He just showed up out of nowhere. He was living up the road, and he thought the HoG looked interesting, so he walked in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other thing that I noticed looking at the photos was that there was a tendency for people's kind of personal obsessions to play out. So
yes.
Depending on who was there, I mean, you mentioned Beck and the deconstructed Barbies,
yes.
But there's also a photo in there of a wall of golden age of late 80s, early 90s wrestlers.
Yes, wrestling was a big part of it.
With the gaps filled in. I mean, that's a very specific era of wrestling.
Yes.
And it seems like an odd match for the kind of chaotic punk art.
No, the person who was most into wrestling was one of the punkiest people you'd ever be likely to meet. Mind you, he could also list all the popes.
I mean, skills that you never knew you needed, I guess.
No, exactly.
So, I mean, tell me a bit about the way that it progressed over time, because as you said, this is not a situation that stayed like stable and static.
No. Well, okay. After the students, I've got a bunch of things. It's what I call the legit squat phase, where it was a squat, but it was a commune as well. Everything was done communally. It was a constantly changing menu of people. People would need a place to crash. They'd arrive there. They might stay a week. They might stay a month. They'd find their situation would improve. They'd move on. Other people would stay for 6 months, a year. Some people stayed for longer. Then the guy who lived in the bus rather took over the whole establishment. That's when it became a tinny house.
Right.
He drove a lot of people away, and when things went badly for him, if there'd been a bustling hive of punk rockers, he might not have gotten stood over quite so easily. That was pretty tragic.
Yeah, I mean,
afterwards, it picked itself up again and was back to the legit squat.
I mean, that's you're kind of describing a sort of primal function of community, right?
Yes.
Like that's a self-organising thing that does the sort of job that social welfare attempts to do as well. And
these are a lot of these people were very individualistic.
Which means, of course, that you're doing that kind of a thing with the participation set entirely on your own terms.
Yes.
So, with the latter phase in the 2000s, like how did that rebuilding happen? Was that a case of
another
people
group of people moved in?
Right.
The house the house was fallow for a bit, and then people decided that they were going to reactivate it because they needed somewhere to live. A couple of friends of mine said, "Right, let's do it," and they did it. Got the power back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dug the drains out. I showed up one Saturday and they're digging their own drains because one of the guys living there was on the council ditching crew, so he knew what he was about. They went down to Mitre 10, they got a pipe. Yeah, I did what anyone would do in the circumstances. I went and bought some beer, came back and watched. I bought some beer for me and some beer for them.
So, tell me about this thing.
The totem pole made of cow bones. That came along in the late 90s. That was made. It's a fantastic construction. It was solid. It was frightening. People would stop and take photos of it.
And I mean, do you know who made it and to what end?
We figured it out. We thought it was one person, and it says it's one person. Oh, sorry, it says it's one person in the book, but we found out at the exhibition that it's not that person; it was someone else, and I can't remember their name offhand.
Oh, right. I mean, I guess that's one of the difficulties with trying to attribute specific artworks.
It's not like it was signed.
Yeah. There are some people like Beck's Barbie dolls where their contributions are very identifiable, but I imagine other things sort of just become part of the patina.
Well, literally, Jack Black did some stuff with the windowsills where he would scrape paint away to make little cartoons, and that perished with the house. Sadly, he was really talented. So,
I mean, you say perished with the house,
because it was part of the house, and no one thought to take a photo.
And what was the end of the house?
Well, what happened was there was the second legit squat phase, and that got usurped by someone else, and then they were there, and then whatever happened to them happened to them. We won't go into that, and then it was derelict. And someone had gone through and made sure that the place was unlivable. The last time I walked through there, someone had smashed all the taps off and pulled the light fixtures out, and gone out of their way to.
Yeah, which almost seems like
and
someone had maybe won the argument about, are we going to tear this place down?
Oh yeah, and then it got set on fire.
That's pretty final.
That was the end of it. There was no way back from that. It's townhouses now. You can go and look, 80 Keeling Street, on the corner of Ferguson Street.
So I guess what we've talked a bit about the house and about your connection to the music scene. I guess the thing that really interests me about it is that it's one of these little self-organising communities.
Yes, that grew up out of nowhere.
And that then spreads tendrils out to the rest of the music scene and artistic scene. Do you think that there were like unique factors in the way that like the world was organised at the time that made that more possible?
No, really, because people are, the creative people are going to find one another.
Sure. Do you think it would be feasible to more or less take over a house and not pay rent?
Well, but the thing is, this was a special situation. It was not paying rent with the full cognizance of the owner.
Yeah, I suppose if someone's going to do that, then they're going to do it regardless.
There are no squatting laws in New Zealand. People actually looked into this because in Britain, if you can squat a building long enough, you become the owner. And that was investigated.
But sadly, well, I don't know about sadly, but not a thing that you can do in New Zealand.
No, there are no laws for it.
And I mean, do you feel like you can detect the fingerprints of it spreading out through culture?
Absolutely. I still have contact pretty much on a weekly basis with people I met and associated with through the House of Goth. Well, this is Palmerston though.
Oh yes,
there's connections everywhere.
Again, it's a very small town, and everyone knows everyone. I mean, can you trace those fingers? Like, are there places that you think have been touched by it? Are there artistic
absolutely.
scenes?
The stomach certainly was touched by the HoG, and it was a two-way street.
And do you feel like that influence persists?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can see the influence of the HoG in Snails, because that's an all art, all the time place.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like that's I've perhaps spent less time at Snell's than I ought, but I have been struck by the way in which it's very like you turn up, you bring your own drinks, you do your own dishes. The gig is on, but like everything else is very self-organised and very community.
Yep. But there's an awful lot of creativity happening as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to have those places that act as a focus for that, right? Otherwise, it's very easy to feel like you're sort of beavering away at your own private madness in total isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing about it was I introduced role-playing games to the HoG.
And do you? I mean, we've had
that was interesting.
Well, I mean, we can talk about that. We've had separate conversations about abstruse 1980s role-playing games. But I mean, how did that affect the HoG? Were people keen to be playing?
Absolutely.
Were you getting them into RuneQuest? Or
yes.
Straight to the hard stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I ran a RuneQuest troll campaign. Everyone was a troll. They loved it. Oh, everyone was a troll except Dale. He was a giant.
Of course. And that then...
People loved it. I had people wanting to join.
That's astounding.
Because they just sat in on a session and seen how much fun we were having. And I want to roll up a character.
That's really cool, because it's one of the things that people persistently complain about is getting people to join in.
Yeah, and then John Hicks came to me and said, Eddie, I'd like to run a vampire campaign. But I know nothing about role-playing. Will you help me? So I ended up helping John run a vampire campaign for a group of hulking degenerates. It was an experience.
And I guess a final question about kind of tendrils reaching forward into the future. Are there acts still playing here in Palmerston North that
Absolutely
persist from that era and that scene?
Well, I certainly know some musicians that still play in the scene. Matt from Old Man Pine, for instance. I showed you on the family tree of the bands.
Oh yes, of course. That is another thing that's in the book. There is an exhaustive family tree of how the bands in Palmerston North
how they connect,
all connect to one another,
and they all connect. Believe me, they all connected.
Again, I mean, we're a very small city,
yes.
So everyone knows everyone.
Well, and all of the people, all of the alt music people, they have to know all the other alt music people. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Well, thank you so much for participating this evening.
Thank you for inviting me in. I've really enjoyed this.
Do you have final things that you want to say, or shall we ask if there are any people who want to ask questions?
Yes, no, I'll take some questions.
All right, I can run the mic out if people want to ask questions. Yep.
Where did the name House of Goth come from?
I have no idea whatsoever. It certainly didn't come in. I can only imagine it was sometime in the late 90s.
When goth, generally speaking, was a bit of a thing.
So sorry, I can't answer better than that.
Do we have any other questions?
I don't know if you covered this, but what is the state of the house itself now?
Oh, it's gone. There are 3 townhouses on the site. It's corner of Ferguson and Keeling Street. You used to be able to look all the way down West Street and see it, and the other way all the way to Lyndhurst Street. You could catapult a golf ball the length of West Street, because they did. Because at one stage, one of the inhabitants was a guy who builds 1/3 scale catapults and mangonels. That was when the watchtower was there.
Yep.
Yep.
So is it, is any of this stuff like on video, or any of your lifetime stuff that you did, is it on video?
Not really, not as such. Some of the individual art might be. But we're not great social media people, so we didn't we made the book, we had the exhibition, and that's about as far as we took it. I mean, we can always take it up in the future, but no, I'm afraid.
Can you tell us a wee bit about the exhibition?
Oh, the exhibition was great fun. We printed the books up. My friend Paul organised a whole bunch of A4 frames, and we collected. We spent 6 months collecting images from people. If you've looked through the book, you'll see my haircut scenes. Yeah, I contributed them, and various other people contributed what they had, and Paul organised them, got the books printed, organised the leisure centre. Yep, when my hair had colour. Well, it still does have colour, I tell you. There was Paul and Nigel running the desk end, and I was the greeter, and it was great fun. We ran it for a weekend. And at the end of it, we were giving pictures away.
Fantastic.
It was I would 10 out of 10 would definitely do that again.